3 is the future.
Welcome, crew, to What Are Your Three, a Channel 3 podcast where we take a member of the Channel 3 community. We discuss 3 games of their choosing, go through some honorable mentions and some other odds and ends for a nice little video game discussion. I'm Dan Tucker, and with me, once again, is not Ray, but Ender Phoenix. Matt is here with us tonight, filling in. Hi, Matt.
You know, kind of like a vampire, you invite me in once, I'm just going to start coming back over and over and over. So, anytime Ray wants to take a break, I'll be here to fill in the gap. Today's guest is, you've seen him on Channel 3 a fair bit. He's a member of multiple clubs, including causes such as the Wounded Warrior Project, the Movember Club, the Service Member Gang, as well as Streamers Clubs and Dad Bod Gaming. His podcast, you can find it on Jackalope Tactics. And I think what's becoming kind of a tradition for me here, so it's haiku time. Let me introduce a fellow C3 gamer. He is Jackalope. Jackalope, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here. That was a good haiku. I like that.
You know, he wasn't even prepared for his own
go
episode
through
that way, so that's good. He's been prepared for when he's been filling in. It's good.
Yeah, I got to make up for my slacking, so I figure I don't want to get yelled at by the community again. So, we'll move on to the first game of the list, and you can share your theme as you see fit. But the first game on the list is Borderlands 2, 4.5 on C3, over 68 reviewers. You rated this a perfect 5-star game. So
there's multiple reasons for that.
Okay, so let's start with that. Why'd you rate it a 5-star?
Okay, so my whole theme for this thing is community or games that I have played just over and over again. I have beat this game so many times. I've played through every end level boss, everything. This was my go-to for the longest time. When I think of gaming, I think of Borderlands 2, honestly. I am a huge Gearbox fan. I went to college 15 minutes down the road from Gearbox Studios in Frisco, Texas. I worked at a coffee shop when I was in college, and all the Gearbox people would come in. I would have conversations with them. I may or may not have done a lot of game testing for them. I can't confirm or deny. But Borderlands 2, I have played this game so much. That's why it's my number one.
All right. So hearing there, you chose Borderlands 2 over Borderlands 1 or the pre-sequel or 3 or Tiny Tina's. You introduced us to the theme, which is great, and talking about the community. So this is the game you answered for C3 question asking, what's the game you know best? And you discussed how often you've gone through it. So what really drew you into playing this multiple times? Because I know all the Borderlands, I played most of the Borderlands games myself, and playing through multiple times doesn't really net you anything new story-wise, but there's new gear and things like that. What really drew you to play multiple times through it?
I honestly can't tell you the first time I played it. I know that, I really don't know when the first time I played it was. I think it was just the fact that, I really enjoy games or game producers and stuff that are not afraid to make a joke. They're not trying to take themselves seriously. And a lot of the Borderlands and the Gearbox games and stuff like that are able to kind of do a little satire or, kind of make a joke. Look at some of the names of some of the weapons. And and you can see exactly that. Where they've got so many different kind of jokes within jokes within jokes. And it's just a game that you can play through and then play through again another time and get a whole different experience. Farming for gear, farming the different end-level bosses and stuff. There really is no end to the game. Even after you complete it, you start over and you can, save and reload into the game and beat the boss again. Different loot will drop and do it over and over and over again. And even at that, you're going to get different stats on the weapons. It's completely randomized. You can get identical weapons with different stats, different attachments, stuff like that. So it's really a new experience every time you play it.
Were you able to take down Cromarax the first time you had to face him?
First time, no. Probably not the first 15, 20 times. But you just keep grinding. You keep getting at it. And I remember back in the day playing Sonic Chaos on the Game Gear. And that game was fun because you could start from the very beginning and you may die in the first level, or you may get to like the 15th level. That's one of the things I like about this game is you can go through there and you can push and push and push and push too far and say, oh, I'm dead, and just respawn and do it again. You just never know how it's going to go. You never know what sort of luck you're going to have on drops or enemies, or if you're going to find enough ammo. Because I don't know, God knows there's many times I ran out of ammo in the middle of a boss fight. I'm like, cool, I got nothing here. So
That's why my class I enjoyed playing through as Zero, because I could rely on my sword much more so as a melee than other characters. So for you, what was the first class, do you remember, that you played through the game as?
I think I started off as Axton, so the soldier who could throw down the minigun. I think I started off as that, but I would say probably 80-90% of my runs, once I got into the game, were playing as Maya, playing as the Siren, because it was just so much fun to phase lock people and just hold them in place as you're just destroying them.
That was definitely a powerful move she had, more so than the others. Being able to basically stun lock characters was huge, and crowd control, and always, again, I played a Zero. I was face tanking everything in the game because I had to be that close. But as Maya, being able to lock everybody in place and let your teammates take them out was huge, huge, huge in that game. So, you played through it multiple times. The story, they had so many story beats. Was there anything in the story that really surprised you? So, heads up, folks, we're probably going to get into some spoilers, but this game came out in 2000.
Statute of limitations is up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the more you play through the first time, and Handsome Jack being the bad guy, you're like, oh no, he's the bad guy. We got to kill him, whatever else. But I really feel like his character arc was fantastic. I mean, they went back in the pre sequels. That's painful for me to say. The pre sequel, and kind of built up his character a little bit. But I mean, he was a dad, and he was trying to be a good father, and he was trying to he exploited his daughter a little bit. But I mean, you just killed his daughter. I mean, he was trying to release the vault monster, and you end up, I mean, murdering him, and he's got the vault symbol on his face. I mean, I would say that's kind of the biggest kind of turn, finding out about Angel, and the fact that it's Handsome Jack's daughter, and the fact that there is more sirens in the universe.
After the final boss fight, you talk about, seeing Handsome Jack for what he really is, and just a mask. So my question to you is, do you remember how long would you say, in milliseconds, to the closest millisecond, it took you to shoot Handsome Jack in the face once it was time to go?
Not, I don't know. I mean, it not very long at all. I mean, you get caught up in the moment. That's one of the good things. I mean, that's one of the things that Castergarden talked about, is the right music really pushes you towards the what you need to do. It really wasn't it was a reaction rather than a choice. As soon as it came up with the opportunity, I mean, you were pulling that trigger before you even thought about it. Because I mean, it's got you so pumped up. You just fought this giant thing that's 10 times the size of you, and then you come down to kill the bad guy, kill the main boss, and you pull the trigger without thinking.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I did not hesitate very much. As a matter of fact, I was pretty sure I was clicking my mouse the entire time he was talking, just waiting for a second for it to open up. So,
Yeah.
right there with you. But no, some of the story beats definitely hit hard, and realizing that Handsome Jack coming off as this charismatic, humor-filled villain, and then realizing his motivations behind everything, it kind of turned the story on its head. But as far as the story goes, in the second game, you're playing through as these new mercenaries, and they introduce characters from the first game that were playable. So, to you, is there the in the first game they were blank slates. In the second game, they actually had personalities.
Mhm.
Did any of those personality? Did you have like preconceived notions of what their personalities would be as you started to realize that they were going to be in the game versus what they were and how they played in the first one?
Well, okay, so truth be told here, I played the first one, didn't really get into it. I didn't necessarily like the first Borderlands because it was unpolished, shall I say. I played through the second one and became such a big fan of the second one. I went back and played the first one, and I think that kind of ruined my experience a little bit because these characters, like as you said, were already kind of played out, and they had characteristics and stuff in them as being non-playable characters. So having Brick and Maya and even Marcus or Dr. Zed, all those people, Moxie, they already had kind of characters that I brought into the first one when I played through. Um, but I really liked the fact that two gave you an opportunity, actually, I guess both really gave you an opportunity to choose your own ending. Every character was so different that it wasn't just the same game with a different skin. You know, as you had said, playing as Zero, I mean, it was melee and it was stealth and everything, and then Maya was more. Um, I was saying Maya, Lilith, Lilith. Oh my gosh, I slapped myself. Um, but playing as Lilith, you're able to face lock. As Axton, you're able to throw down your turret. Everything was completely different. And I think one of the things to kind of go off script here a little bit, they continue that into the third. Into the third one, there was a lot more characteristics, and they had little snarky remarks and stuff like that, which they didn't quite bring into two until the Tiny Tina D&D campaign on two, which hands down is the best DLC.
I think that there's something to say there that Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep is up there with DLC royalty such as Red Dead Redemption's Undead Nightmare. It's things that people took and put a passion and a love into it that made it more than just a DLC. It made it its own unique adventure.
Absolutely.
And again, I played through the first one. I played through as Mordecai. So I had a very particular, we'll say, vendetta against Jack in number two, because
Right.
playing through the first one, Bloodwing was my boy. He stood by my side the entire game. And then, frankly, out of the surprising deaths in Borderlands 2, you had Roland and you had Bloodwing. For me
Yep.
personally, Bloodwing was the more emotional response, surprising death. Either of those stick out, or was there, as a final question, was there any event that stuck out to you in the game that really brought it home?
Well, I think you hit both of them. They were both very emotional. And especially the way, I mean, once again going into spoiler territory, the way that Bloodwing died. It just basically turning against you, and then, well, I mean, like I said, it came out in 2012, but basically, I mean, with his head exploding off, I mean, it's like that was like, did that seriously just happen? You know, okay. So Bloodwing is number one, and Roland's number two. Um, but Borderlands 2 is the first game when I was dating my wife that I got her into. I bought her a version for Xbox 360 because I was a PlayStation guy at the time. I bought it for Xbox 360 and bought an extra controller, and we started playing Borderlands 2, and that is the first game I ever introduced my wife to. So,
Awesome.
That's beautiful. The consoles came together.
Yep.
I have to ask, just so that we get the movie conversation out of the way and everybody can punch that off their bingo card. Any takes with the trailer? Oh man! Oh boy! Oh, we got migraine rubbing or something happening.
So I'm gonna watch it, and I'll probably go see it in theaters. But I gotta say, with the casting and how it looks so far, it looks like garbage. I'm just gonna say it.
I've been very curious. There have been
casting.
2 camps from day one for the casting, and even with the trailer coming out, there's like okay, and then there's no, and yeah, I was kind of curious where you stood with this, and I figured that was going to be your response after that conversation, but had to hear it.
No, it looks terrible.
Well, let's move on that note then to game 2, Mario Kart DS. Again, a 4.5 rated game on the site. Among the highest selling games of the series. Really brought Mario Kart back into things. I didn't realize, like, Game Boy Advance, they sold just around 6 million. GameCube sold around 6 million. This one sold 23 million. Now, granted, it's not the 60 million Mario Kart 8, but for the DS coming in here and kind of changing up the way, you know, you didn't have to worry about cords anymore. You didn't have to worry about linking anybody. You didn't have to worry about screen sniping. You didn't have to worry about screen sharing. Because I figure this, we're talking about community, so I want to hear where did community come in? Where does Mario Kart DS come in for you?
Okay, so I didn't do my research here when Mario Kart DS came out, but I would say that this is greatly due to the Nintendo DS, which I would go as far as to say is one of the best consoles. Even the handheld consoles, I'll put that caveat in there, handheld consoles, it has happened so far. Because the battery life was ridiculous. You could fold it up, put it in your pocket. At this point in time in Mario Kart DS was my military career. There was a long period of time in which, with the DS in general, you didn't have to turn it off. You just fold it up, stick it in your pocket, and then whenever you're not busy, pull it back out and continue playing. Prince of Persia, whatever else. But specifically Mario Kart DS, I have memories of 2-3 o'clock in the morning in the middle of Afghanistan, sitting around playing Mario Kart because only one person had to have the game, and you could share the game with everybody. You couldn't play all the tracks, but there was like 15 tracks you could play just if someone had the game. So that's how we settled all of our disputes. That's how we settled so many different things in the middle of Afghanistan, was playing Mario Kart. And I very distinctly remember at one of my buddies, he was, one of my supervisors, he was actually my squad leader. We made him so mad that he closed it, bit his DS, and opened it back up and kept playing. That is one of those memories that will always stick out in my head of old McCroot just biting his DS because he was getting so mad that we were beating him.
Nintendo really made up for letting you play with multiple people with only one license for the game. They took it the other way with the Switch now. But what I have to ask, yeah. I'm trying to ask tastefully. What was it? Just you guys were beating him that badly? Is that what happened, or was it the nature of the dispute that was having to be settled?
It was probably just us playing, because it always, those blue shells, those red shells are just absolutely deadly, and they come at the worst time imaginable. As soon as you're winning, a blue shell's coming for you. And some people don't quite have the skill, and some people just like to be jerks and pick on people. I was one of them, and we would pick on people and just make their life a living hell in Mario Kart DS.
I'm sure you guys didn't gang up on him at all. That probably, there's no way that would have happened to a superior in that way.
No, never, never.
So were you able to do battle
How many
mode with
push-ups
that?
did you do as a result?
Yes, we could do battle mode. There was a handful, like I said, you couldn't have all the tracks and stuff if you didn't have the game. But I want to say there was 15 racing tracks and there was probably 3 battle mode tracks. And I mean, we every single night we were playing DS, and that was still with like the DS flights. You know, I still have mine around here somewhere. It's red and black. And the battery's probably still at like 97%, even though I haven't touched it in 5 years.
I have to jump back to Matt's question. How many push-ups did that cost you?
Well, so I was in aviation, aviation and military intelligence. So on the flight line, there's a whole lot of rules that don't apply to us. You know, we don't wear our jacket. You know, we don't wear hats. We don't. You know, it's a whole chain of command and stuff that doesn't quite apply to us. So I don't know. I probably got punched or something else, but I didn't have to do any push-ups there.
I'm going to ask this question in the most tasteful way possible. Let me ask this. What's the most tasteful dispute you had to settle with Mario Kart?
Generally, it was who has the fuel to generators. Sometimes we would have he would have disputes and stuff, who had to go get food. And then the biggest one was generally whose turn it was to actually take duty. I don't know how else to say that. We were rotating through certain duties and stuff, and we'd say, "Well, I don't want to do it. You do it. You do it." So we'd play Mario Kart, and whoever won would get to choose what to do.
So it came down to it. You're trying to make sure you establish dominance. What was the course you would run? What was your favorite course to run? The one that you said this is mine.
What was the name of it? There was a snow level. I don't remember what it was. Maybe I should have done my research. Wherever there was a snow level that every single time we would race it, I would always hit a snowman. And I had a buddy of mine, Kelly. He now works for Google. He would always call me Snowball for like 2 days after every time we'd play. So I would hit a snowman, and he'd call me Snowball, and then we'd go on with our day, and until we raced again, and I'd hit a snowball again, and
I think Frat Snowland might have been your winner. It sounds like.
May have been, yeah. It sounds about right.
Did you have a racer you specifically ran with usually?
Racer. I generally try to go with dry bones if I can.
Interesting.
But nowadays in 8, you know, with the weights and the cart and all that type of stuff matters. I'm trying to get into the cups and playing Mario Kart with you guys and stuff, and I'm still trying to learn all that stuff to figure out how the carts versus the wheels versus everything else quite plays into everything.
Listen, I'll just tell you this much: if you look up basic, and either you pull up the basic trainings on YouTube, or Basic has a cart builder, like a little website he put together that based on your play style, he can give you a recommendation on your build. So you just you start there, and you'll work it out from there. No matter what, you just have fun. That's all that matters. I tell you, those Mondays with the dad gaming, and then I frankly, I've not gotten to partake in cups yet just because of the chaos of my life. But I can tell you, Monday nights with the dad gaming are the place to be, just to hang out and screw around and whatnot. But the basic every time you got to tell somebody basic training. That's where you go to learn Mario Kart 8.
Yeah. So generally during the Mario Kart nights, I'm in Evil Vixen's stream most of the time. And I always start up #NotLast. That's my goal, is to not be last.
All you need to see is the results are in. That's all. You just don't want to see that screen.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about Mass Effect 2, your third game on the list. I don't know if we've never had it where I've paid attention, at least, to the fact that all 3 of your games are 4.5 rated on the site. I didn't realize how highly rated DS was for Mario Kart either. I, for one thing, 4.5 is a little low for Mass Effect 2, but now I'm even more curious because of the communal nature of the games and the discussions that have been had here. Obviously, you already, your first game with your wife was Borderlands 2. So, where does Mass Effect fall into all this with Mass Effect 2?
So it is kind of weird to have a community game that's a single player, but this was one of the first games that got me back into gaming. Um, I was not born a gamer. Let's see, we had a Nintendo back in the day. We had an N64, but then there was a point in time. I'm not trying to start a sob story here or anything, but at one point in time, our house got broken into, and our Nintendo DS, or I'm sorry, our N64 was stolen. And when we got the insurance money, I was like, cool, we're gonna get another N64, everything's gonna be good to go. And my parents were like, no, this has to go towards like fixing the windows and replacing this and that.
So you learn that insurance money doesn't quite work out 1-to-1, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I cannot remember after that point having another gaming system. From the N64 until I was in the military, and I think I bought a GameCube. I didn't have any gaming systems. We weren't a gaming family. And so I had that GameCube, and then once again in Afghanistan, the exact same deployment as Mario Kart DS, I bought a Nintendo, or I'm getting the Nintendo DS is on my tongue. I bought an Xbox 360 from a buddy of mine, which I brought him into the Channel 3 team as well. Much like he's Phoenix Shifter, I think his name is. He's got several names.
Get that referral XP. That's all that matters.
I did, yeah. But I bought a Xbox 360 from a buddy of mine, and he's like, the only game I have is Mass Effect 2. And I was like, cool, never heard of it. So I got to play in that and I had a big old heavy TV that if that thing would have fell, it would have broke my legs. And an Xbox 360, and I played Mass Effect 2 nonstop. That's all I did, and I was just grinding through to get every single achievement, to get every single weapon, to get every single thing, because that's all I was doing at night. So Nintendo or Mario Kart DS during the day, and Mass Effect 2 at night, and that's really what kind of kickstarted everything, and I got back into it. Much like Borderlands 2. I don't know if I introduced my wife to it or what, but she started playing, and then watching her play through Mass Effect 2 really kind of made me want to play again. So she would play, I would play, she would play, I'd play. So we'd basically kind of rotate through, and I had my favorite characters. It really was it was one of the best games of that time, and it really brings back memories.
The game holds up. I'll say that much off here. Nobody brings up Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect 3 unless they're talking about the trilogy as a whole. It's always Mass Effect 2. And I'm not sure why. It's funny to hear you played it on the 360, but this was your first one, because I played it on the PlayStation 3. I didn't have access to Mass Effect 1 either. It was just like a little motion comic they gave you at the beginning of the game that says, hey, go play this thing. Or, go through this so you can learn the story of the first one and make your choices. Did that have the same option for you playing that on the 360? Or did it try and load the game, or what did it do?
Yeah, so you had the same options. Of course, you chose, your class and stuff like that. But then you also kind of had to go through some steps of, because if you've played 1 and then 2, you can import your save. And I've tried to do that. But you basically say, okay, who was the choice? Aiden and
is Ashley, I think.
Caden
and Ashley, I think.
Yeah. So you have a choice. So basically, who you bring through there. But I mean, you basically start from there. and it gave a good option. It's just a shame you couldn't bring Grunt from. You can if you play through all three, you can actually bring Grunt from 1, 2 to 3. But if you're starting at 2, you can't bring Grunt over, unfortunately.
You just got hooked with this one, just playing through the story, playing every mission humanly possible. Your first taste of achievements, basically just that achievement unlocked adrenaline hit you were getting over there at the same time.
Yep. That's exactly it. Because I really enjoy a good RPG game that you can actually make a difference. And by that I mean you can change out your armor, you can change out your weapons and stuff like that. And somehow that dopamine or whatever else is like even in WoW, like grinding for hours and hours to get a new piece of gear that you equip, and you're like, that's different. You can physically you can see that there's a difference to your character.
So did you play through multiple times then to for the sake of trophy hunting, not to take away from Matt's other life, but were you achievement hunting here and going full renegade, going full paragon?
I can't go renegade. I'm too nice of a guy.
You're weak.
I have tried to go, and I'll get into a point where I'm like, oh, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I try to be selfish. I have played through several times, but it's almost kind of pointless because I will make the same decisions just about every time.
I always revert to the same play style. I always revert to the same decisions. And I don't care. I still have a blast playing the game.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's certain weapons that I like, certain weapons I don't like. And so generally when I pick, I'll end up equipping the same weapons every single time, going through the same playthrough. I will say I played through multiple times on that last suicide mission, which once again, going into spoiler territory here, if you plan it just right, nobody dies. And I have done that repeatedly. Just I have to make sure everything is perfect. That way none of my characters die, because otherwise I get frustrated.
I lost Jack my first go through. That was, and never again was I going to lose anybody on that mission. I thought you were going to say play through that mission though, because that is one of the best. To go, Commander Nikki will point out that is one of the best tracks in all of gaming. Is that suicide mission music when you're going in there?
Yeah, and my person was always Tali. I like Tali. I have no idea why, but I like the fact that she was in 3, right?
Yeah, and I think you got to see her part of her face.
Yeah,
you do, depending on how. Yep.
Yeah, so I actually worked at GameStop when Mass Effect 3 came out. It was a big deal. I was at the launch party, everything else. But when everybody got upset at the ending, everyone was like, "Oh, I'm going to return this game. I'm returning this game." I'm like, "It's a game, But people were also returning stupid games because they were too short, and I was like, "That's whatever."
So, what was your take on 3 then?
I didn't like the ending, but goodness gracious, I mean, that was a choice. It's interesting, and I wish I would look this up, but I want to say that in the year 2048, we venture past Pluto and find the Mass Effect relays. So, I mean, that should be coming up here pretty soon. But it can happen. And that's one thing that I always harp on with books and with games and stuff like that. I live on that, what I would call believable fiction, where it's not true, but give a little bit of, imagination, it could happen.
As long as we clear the Terminator timeline, I'm good. We're good.
Right.
We got past a few Judgment Days, the ones that matter and the ones they made up after that. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. You look at like the Harry Potter universe or the Percy Jackson universe, a lot of that stuff, I mean, that's believable fiction, and I believe that's kind of what Mass Effect goes into. Is you've got 2048, if I'm right, you go past Pluto, you find the Mass Effect relays, and we're basically end up with all the other aliens, because the aliens are like, finally, the humans figured it out. But technology goes further and further and further, And if you remember, what the thing about Mass Effect 3 was that it was the AI that we developed AI, and the AI started taking over, which is what I'm terrified about nowadays with AI. And you basically have the option for AI to basically take over, or to hit the big reset button and go back to the Stone Ages. You know, so I think I don't want to get too deep here, but I think using that believable fiction thing, it could happen.
I'm just waiting to see
So
the rumors. What happens with the rumors of Mass Effect 4 following the end of 3? I don't even know what they pick as the canonical ending there. But
well, if Mass Effect 4 comes out, I'm gonna be like first in line. You know, then that's one of the things about Borderlands 3 is when Borderlands 3 came out, I was not only first in line there, I was in by a strange fluke, because I'm not, by a strange fluke, I was in Seattle for the big launch party. I was in Seattle when Gearbox came out with their big thing, and they announced Gearbox 3 or Borderlands 3 and all this type of stuff. They had a launch party where we got in, drinks, everything else. They had tattoo artists there giving tattoos. You could go get a Borderlands 3 tattoo. But we went to that, and then I came back to Texas. And like I said, Gearbox was only 15 minutes from where I lived. I got invited to the launch party. So we ended up going to the launch party. There was people dressed up as Moxie and everybody else. And actually, Mixmaster Mike was there, I think. But we got the whole swag bags, the whole thing. I got a picture with Randy Pitchford. But I mean, I was all about that stuff. And then Mass Effect 3 came out. Good God. Borderlands 3 came out, and I was kind of disappointed, to be honest with you.
hey, listen, I'm still there. I've got my N7 jacket up in the closet in the hallway. I've got my Normandy model on one of the shelves behind me here. I'm still there. Don't worry.
So we're going to take a quick poll. What comes out first, Mass Effect 4 or Metroid Prime 4?
Probably Metroid Prime 4, because they've actually announced it. I mean, it seems like Mass Effect was like, it may happen, may not.
We saw a title screen. Mass Effect, we got a poster.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see which one comes first.
It's still BioWare developing Mass Effect 4, so there at least has been one consistent company doing that one.
I don't know.
Never mind.
Recent EA announcement, I don't know what.
Touché,
Anything could be possible. All right. We're moving on to honorable mentions, 1 to 3 games that you have on your next up list. And you chose, for the first game here, Division 2, which unfortunately took a little hit on the score here compared to your others at a 3.8 average over 19 reviewers. But again, you rated it a perfect 5. What system did you play this on?
Okay, so I've played it on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. I have probably over 250 hours logged into this game. I have created and deleted so many characters in this game, because the progression is so fun. There's really not a whole lot of like end game for me, but you start off with a character and you build it up and build it up. Progressing through weapons and skill trees, and eventually specializations, and actually creating your gear and stuff. I mean, I have so many hours in this game. Some playing with people, some mostly just fiddling around. It's one of those games that I can sit on the couch on the Xbox and just play for hours. I think that's one thing that Ubisoft did really well, because I will play and I'll get these Ubisoft rewards or whatever else, and I'll go into the store and redeem it for money or a weapon or a skin or whatever else, and then just rinse and repeat. I have so many games. I have so many hours into this game that it's not even funny.
Yeah, looking at your list, it actually sparked me to go back and re-download it on my PC and just start going around the city again. So did you play the First Division?
I got completely destroyed in the First Division. I want to say that I played it for probably less than 10, 10 hours. I downloaded it, played, and it was one of those things. You've got roaming big bosses, and especially in one. And I remember going and getting killed and then respawning and going and getting killed just repeatedly. When I was like, you know what? I'm not playing this game anymore. There's a very common theme here that most of my things are too. I generally don't like a first game when they come out because it's unpolished. I don't think they've worked all the kinks out yet. I tend to like all the twos. You look Borderlands 2, Mass Effect 2, Division 2, everything else. I feel like Division 2 did a really good job. Plus, it doesn't hurt that I got the game and all the DLC on Xbox for like $10. So that's probably one of the reasons why I have so many hours into this game.
Okay. So would you say you prefer, from a setting perspective, what'd you like more, Washington, D.C. or New York?
I would say New York, kind of. I've been to both Washington, D.C. and New York. I've been to New York more recently. And so I really like the fact that you've got you can kind of recognize landmarks and stuff. You can see streets, you can kind of recognize things, and it makes it a little more kind of personal, you know. I haven't been to Washington, D.C. since I was in elementary school. I was probably in sixth grade last time I went to Washington, D.C. And so it was cool to see stuff and you go into the White House, but it was just any other place for me. What is frustrating about New York, though, is that it's because it's like basically in-game DLC. You either play through the entire game and then go into New York, or you create a new character and get fast-tracked to New York, and you really don't get a chance to build your character from the ground up. You know.
Do you have a preferred loadout? If so, what would that be?
So my preferred loadout, I'm always a fan of a good assault rifle, or I don't like anything either single action or semi-automatic. I've got to have something automatic to put bolts down range. But I always carry a sniper rifle, whether it be a specialization or my secondary being a sniper rifle. I never use a pistol. But if I'm playing solo, I always have the health pack, because if you get downed, it drops and immediately respawns you. And it takes like 3 or 4 minutes for it to re-pop. But you go down immediately, it revives you. But if I'm playing with other people, it's either the cluster mines or the drone, I believe.
Okay,
I'm all about putting damage on my people.
Because as a fire aficionado, I always opted for the flame sentry, just because, yeah, I know it doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but it still looks really cool. And honestly, if you're playing this game and you're not looking cool, why are you playing the game?
Right. Yeah. Well, later in New York, you can get the shock mines, and shock mines are always really nice, because you basically just throw them out and they scatter and then kind of have sparks between them. So as the enemies and stuff are walking through them, they're just getting shocked, which is really good with the bosses, because you can kind of you can run around and they'll walk right through the shock mines every time.
I have PTSD from mines right now playing Helldivers 2, so I might avoid that. No, because my loadout, I generally would opt for a sniper rifle and a shotgun, so I can hit from far or close. Preferably one shot and the person's down. But I like your strategy too, being able to put as much damage down range and chew away as they try to approach you. So that's good too.
Absolutely.
So as far as endgame is concerned, how well do you say you fare in the dark zone?
Not well at all.
Too trusting?
Well, I tend to run solo, and I'm not very good at video games, and so when I get into a firefight, I panic. And playing against AI, playing against the bad guys and stuff in game, I can I can kind of plan what they're going to do. I make sure they don't flank me. I make sure I'm moving properly. But in a situation like that, against other players, I can't plan. They're smart. They're good. So I tend to, like, as soon as I get into a firefight, I try to get a safe distance or I'm dead.
Yeah, I never got to play much in the Dark Zone myself. Like I said, I never really reached that point in the game. But my co-host Tricky on our show, he does nothing but play Division 2, and he always talks about just running in, hitting the Dark Zone, getting out. But it always intrigued me that you can go in there with your group of friends and how quickly they could betray you to get gear. And that's partially why I have trust issues in that game.
I would say that the Dark Zone in the Division mobile game, is that thing out yet? There's a Division mobile game they've got a beta right now, and I've been playing a little bit, and the Dark Zone is actually pretty decent on there. I don't know if it's just that people stink at this point or what, but you can actually get in and out of the Dark Zone pretty well.
The game had a lot of audio logs, and one of my favorites in it was in the Outcast. You found a audio log called Cistern, and they talk about how they're going to poison the cistern, and one of the guys actually calls it a cistern, and another of the Outcasts goes, "Wait, what's the?" And he goes, "Well, it's a cistern." Well, it's a reservoir. Well, no, it's actually called a cistern. He goes, "Well, you can't. What are you, big fancy guy, calling this thing using your fancy words?" He goes, "No, an ambulance is called an ambulance. Otherwise, it's a van. But just shut up and go fill the cistern." Anyways, that was my favorite audio log. Do you have any audio log stories like that you found?
I don't tend to listen to the audio logs very much. I'm kind of I'll collect things, but I don't get wrapped up on trying to collect every little thing. As you're walking through, it'll say, a collectible is in your location. You're looking on the map and you're like, where is this thing? And it'll be like above or below you or something like that. And I'll look around and I'll do a fair amount of looking. But if I can't find it, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to stress myself all out about this. Generally, whatever the audio logs are playing, I'm focused on something else. I'm trying to charge through. I'm trying to plan ahead. The audio logs will play, and they're kind of playing in the background. I'll hear them, and I'll kind of get the gist of what it is, but I don't really listen to the audio logs that much.
Fair enough. No, and that's a difficult balance in many games, is whether or not audio logs stop you from doing other things, which a lot of players hate, or B, keep playing when you're trying to do something else and distracting you from the goal of what you're focused on. So I don't blame it. I just put that out as like an Easter egg that maybe not an Easter egg, but a funny little thing that occurred in such a serious game. So that was my little fun experience with it.
Let's move to another sequel. Let's talk about Risk of Rain 2. 4.5 rated. Not going to believe it. Everything, almost everything's 4.4. Sorry, Division 2. You didn't make the cut. Roguelike. I have to ask, first of all, because you talked about a polish between a first and second game. This is an entirely different. Have you played Risk of Rain 1 compared to Risk of Rain 2?
Yeah. Once again, I played 2 first and then tried to go back and play 1. And it's very hard to make that transition because it's a completely different game.
It's not. Yeah, you would not even know they were related, because it's like 8-6. It's basically an 8-bit game versus a full 3D world.
Well, it's the difference between Helldivers and Helldivers 2. I mean, the Helldivers 1 is a top down, so it's really kind of weird.
Yeah, the Grand Theft Auto 2 to Grand Theft Auto 3 jump. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a bit of a wild game, a roguelike where you just continue to make runs, continue to make runs. How did this one end up here? Is this a community orientation or just a game you wanted to talk about?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I got into the game, once again, being a Gearbox game. It kind of popped in my radar here. They spoke. Wait, Risk of Rain 2 came out. It was announced in Seattle when I was there. And they passed out coins, and they were like, what are these coins for? And you flip it over, and it was the game code. And so that's how I got the game for free. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I started playing it and I really enjoyed it. And then I had a buddy of mine who was also playing it, and he was like, oh no, he's one of those people that's like way too good for their own good. So he was all leveled up, and he was, I forget which character he was, but he was like basically sniping from the back and just doing massive amounts of damage, and I was pulling all the aggro. Um, and I really enjoyed it. I was, it was good. It was kind of my go-to because, much like I had said previously, having a game that you can start off with and just go further and further and further and further, you never know how far you're going to go, is really kind of fun to me because in this, you die and you're like, oh man, that sucks. And you spawn back in and you start all over again.
But you always know you're going
to
to die. So there's nothing, it's not disheartening at the same time. That's the nature of the game. Okay. You are going to die. So don't get worried about it. You're going to die. Just get back into it.
Eventually you're going to die. Yeah. So I really liked that. And then I took my son to DreamHack last year, DreamHack in Dallas. I go every single year because, once again, I live in the DFW area. And we went to like the PC area where you have to they give you like an hour on the PCs. And my son was like, well, what should we play? We've already played Fortnite. We'd already played Rocket League. He's like, well, what's this game? So I was like, come on, let's spawn in. Let's have fun. So we sat there and played for like 3 hours, 1 hour at a time. And we got home and he's like, man, I really want to play that game. So I came home and I took my old PC, that I had Frankenstein together, and I Frankenstein some more, built him the PC. I made him a Steam account and I said, here's your PC. Here's your game of Risk of Rain. Let's go. Let's play this. And so that was the very first game I bought my son on PC. So it kind of goes back into that whole community thing. I honestly, looking back, I don't think I've ever played with them since. But that was the reason that I built this PC, or I gave him my old PC, and I created him a Steam account and said, let's do this. Let's play this game because I have a ton of fun.
Just get him started down the path.
Yep, and now he plays Fortnite.
So what's your favorite item you've come across in Risk of Rain 2?
I really enjoy the sticky because you've got a chance to attach grenades to them. There's a lot of really good stuff. It seems like every single time I play, I come across something new. Whether it be the guitar or even coming up with Luna coins, which you can then kind of go to worlds between worlds and kind of cash in your Luna coins for various different items and stuff. I can't say that I have a favorite weapon or a favorite item. It just seems like every time you play through, you see certain things, you're like, yep, that's it. Don't remember what it is exactly, but there is one that has a chance to catch people on fire, which is always fun.
You got Matt's attention.
Yeah. But there's also several weapons and stuff that the enemies explode whenever they die. So most of the time, if you hadn't played it before, you have this bar on the very top. It starts off like very easy, and then it goes to from very easy to medium to hard, and then it just starts going into ha, and you're like, I'm gonna die. So having with all these, eventually when you start getting all these swarms of enemies coming towards you, either having fire or the explosion or something is beneficial because it does AoE damage and helps you. But there's also turrets. There's health turrets and health drones and stuff like that to try and actually stand a chance, because it just gets harder and harder and harder the more that you play.
What's the either I'll say worst item or weirdest item that you may have come across? Because they've got some weird ones in here.
They really do. There is an item that is just a question mark. It may be the guitar. That it says that's one of the weirdest things. Is like, how is a guitar going to help you in a firefight? There is some really strange ones. Like I said, it's like every time you play, you get something else that spawns, and you come across it, and you're like, I have no idea what this is. I'm gonna pick it up. You know, there is some like negative things, stuff that actually like lowers your health, but it gives you a stat otherwise. I try to keep my health as high as possible because I'm not very good at dodging. I'm more of a tank, and I'm gonna go. I'm gonna stand there, guns blazing, and I'm gonna fire at you, and hopefully I have more firepower than you do. So I'm all about getting that health up.
Moving on to your final honorable mention, Pokemon. Quotes mainly blue.
Yes.
4.6. We'll go to this. We'll hit 4.6 over 79 reviews. We got above the 4.5, Dan. We did it.
We did it.
You rated this 5 stars.
Well, it's nostalgia. Pokemon Blue came out in the late '90s, mid '90s. When I was a kid.
Thank God you didn't call it the late 1900s. I would have had to end this right then and there.
Hey,
somebody did that
baby.
the other day, and I lost my mind.
Well, so it came out when I was a kid. My brother had a PC. That was back when you went to Micro Center and bought a PC for like $500. And he had an emulator, and he had Pokemon Blue on there. And so I played Pokemon Blue. Since it was an emulator, I had absolutely no idea how to even open the menu. And I played for probably 6 hours without even opening the menu, which looking back is quite impressive. And I couldn't play anymore, and I had wrote it on a sticky note, and I was like, I have no idea how to save. Don't turn off the computer. So I played through that, and then that year for Christmas, I asked my parents, it's like, I want a Game Boy Color. And so my parents searched and searched and searched and found one, and it was like the teal color. And still to this day, I have that teal Game Boy Color with Pokemon Blue in there. I have, of course, restarted several times, but that is the very first Pokemon game I ever owned, and that is to this day my favorite.
Okay, so if you still have the cartridge, did you ever have to do the battery exchange, or is
actually,
it's still good to go?
Yeah, it's still good to go.
Cool.
Did they on the Game Boy Color? Did it have the cartridge?
Yeah, had a literal battery backup. So there's a little like a little watch battery inside of the cartridge to back it up. I think in the
Game Boy Advance and stuff did.
Yeah. So on the originals, what happened is you have some cartridges that are so old now that battery is dead, and a lot of people have lamented in the fact that they've lost their original saves. So they've had to go in, take the cartridge apart, and that battery was actually soldered to the board. So they had to desolder it and put a new fresh battery in to be able to complete games and do saves. Yeah. So interesting. No, and there are some that still are active today that the batteries haven't died out. So just something to note for the future.
Yeah, I haven't checked it in probably the last 2 years, but I mean, it's been good so far.
Schrodinger's Pokemon. Leave them where they are.
That is how I live my life. I live my life by Schrodinger's law. I was telling my wife earlier today with the new Avatar movie. I said, Avatar, the Last Airbender. I said, at this point in time, it's Schrodinger's show. Because I haven't seen it, it's both the greatest thing ever and the worst thing ever. So you don't know until you watch it.
Simple solution over here. I don't have Netflix anymore. All right. So whenever there's a Pokemon game, we have to ask the obvious question. Did you use a Master Ball on Mewtwo?
Of course. I think everybody did. I mean,
there's some tryhards who don't. They try going after them with like regular Pokeballs, and we call those people nutso.
There's also chuckleheads who use it on a Goldeen or something too.
Yeah, that's just not right.
Okay, so really, seriously, the actual obvious question to ask: did you evolve Eevee?
Yeah, I did. I want to say I've started it several times. I've probably evolved it into every Eevee at that point in time. Eevee is one of my favorites because it is everything, and now they keep adding more and more to it with the Sylveon and stuff like that. But I mean, back in the day, if whatever gym you're going into, I don't remember what at this point in time, but that gym you're about to go into, I'm like, I've got a really strong Pokemon over here that I can very easily make to counter whatever he's about to bring in. So
I think Nintendo's afraid to continue on because at some point they're going to have to make a Ghost Eevee, and I think the implications there are a little strong.
Yep. I mean, it's in some sort of stone,
Stone is involved, yes. All right, okay. All joking aside, the real question everybody needs to know: did you catch all 151?
Oh, see, I thought there was going to be a different question here. No, I did not. I am terrible in the way that I very rarely ever finish games. I normally like I never completed the one. I've never completed a Pokedex. I normally get to a point, I beat the game, I play, I get frustrated, and I put it down and I move to the next one. My son is one of those people in all the Omega Ruby, Omega Sapphire, stuff like that. He would grind and just go through the Elite Four or whatever is at that point in time. He'd catch every single Pokemon there was, and he would just grind through there. I very distinctly remember him saying, "Hey, I just caught this person. Hey, I caught this person." I'm like, "Cool." But another thing about Pokemon is the fact that that was my childhood. So when Pokemon Go came out when my son was about 5 or 6, and so I then was able to shovel all of my childhood Pokemon stuff into my son's life, and he got obsessed with Pokemon, catching the Pokemon in Pokemon Go. We introduced him to Pokemon on his Nintendo DS, or I think it was 3DS at that point in time. So he played through all the Pokemon games up until Arceus. But I don't talk about Arceus. Arceus was one. It was the worst, in my opinion, of the Pokemon series.
It is an opinion, yes.
It is an opinion.
I would agree.
Yes. I did not. I did not like
everybody.
I was at the release of Scarlet and Violet. I played through a little bit, and then I lost my game. And then I found it again, and I had to restart, and I played through, and I probably, at this point in time combined, I have probably less than 20, 25 hours in Violet right now, because I just didn't quite get it. Really, with starting off with the big legendary Pokemon, they're just like, here, you fed this Pokemon a sandwich. Now this Pokemon is in your pockets. I'm like, what is this?
Do you remember the first team you used to take down the Elite Four?
No, I don't.
Did it?
I mean, I've because of my military and stuff. I've had concussions that I don't remember that stuff. I don't remember what my team was.
No, that's absolutely fair. I just remember using the Prima guidebook, trying to build whatever team I needed to counter, and grinding on Championship Road. I know Zapdos was definitely involved in that because he was a level 50, and Drill Peck took down most everything I needed to take down on that, especially Bruno's team. Like, forget that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then some random question, maybe not that important. What was your first starter?
Squirtle, all the way. I am a Squirtle fan for Squirtle Squad. I've got a pin around here somewhere, the Squirtle with the sunglasses on.
I'm done with this guy, Dan.
Don't shake your head.
You if you haven't figured out Ender's branding by now, unless you were going to say Charmander.
All fire. Yeah. Now, okay, so let me say this though. Squirtle is my favorite first evolution Pokemon. Third evolution is Charizard all the way. All day, every day is Charizard. But Squirtle from the very beginning, I don't know what it is. Maybe he's cute or whatever else, but Squirtle right off the bat is in my opinion, one of the best Pokemon.
It's too late. It's too
And
late.
then
You can't save it.
I get it. He likes easy mode. He wants to coast by the first gym. As a Charmander user, I had to master my Pokemon to be able to get through the first 2 gyms, which are very dangerous for me. So yeah. I get it. You just want easy mode.
Whatever.
All right. Let's get this back on the rails. Let's talk about a future game, Jackalope. We're going to talk about Star Wars Outlaws, a game that's still actively in the news, has not been canceled. A game I will call out, we've talked about Ubisoft a couple times here. Skull and Bones, kind of mixed at best, we'll say right now, but they had a quietly underrated year last year. They dropped, especially with kind of finishing up with Avatar and then having the Prince of Persia game drop in there as well. So they've had a couple of pretty strong games that have flown under the radar. So I don't know if that leads to any further optimism, but you want that open Star Wars game, huh?
I do. I really do. I am a huge Star Wars fan as of probably 2 years ago.
Is that Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Jedi behind you also? That's what's kind of curious.
That's Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I wasn't sure with the red writing if it was going to say Revenge and go for the full original title or not.
So it's very weird because that thing used to be way over here and it was just kind of tucked away. It looks very planned right there, especially put up with the Scotch tape. That was not planned, but I am very much a Star Wars fan as of about 2 years ago. We went to Disney and we went to Galaxy's Edge within Disney, and I was like, okay, this is my personality now.
I'm home. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been a fan of the Millennium Falcon. I don't know what it is about the Millennium Falcon, but I've always been kind of attached to it. But like walking into Galaxy's Edge and like seeing the Millennium Falcon up there, seeing the X-Wing and seeing the TIE fighters and stuff, and I was like, this is my personality now. I mean, what you probably can't see over here on the walls, I've got all my lightsabers mounted on the wall. I've got, like kyber crystals and stuff, and I mean, I've got everything right here.
You can also see Ender's Lego behind too. We're with you.
Yeah. So that was the point in which I got into The Mandalorian. I got into, I dove just absolutely feet first into lore. And I've got to the point now where I will sit there and talk about lore with my wife until she just doesn't want to hear it anymore. Because she is I don't know the terminology for it, but she's all about the originals. So the originals are there, and that is the absolute gospel. So we start going into prequels, we start going into post, and it's not the same. Except for Jar Jar Binks. She's a big fan of Jar Jar Binks. Which I try not to hold against her. But I start talking about
legs
lore,
out from under me here. I got nothing. You better pick up your own follow up here, Jackalope. I'm disarmed.
So I start talking about lore, talk about a lightsaber lore. Start talking about like Darth Revan, Darth Bane, all that type of stuff. I drive a decent amount because I live out in the middle of nowhere. I drive a decent amount, so I got onto Audible and just started listening to kind of canonical Star Wars stories and stuff like that. And I can sit there and talk about Star Wars lore nonstop. And my wife is like, I don't care. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm done with it. So
have you seen anything coming out with this game, or you just say, give me, you're in?
Well, so I've seen a fair amount of it. I forgot we were talking about. I was talking about Star Wars. I forgot all about Star Wars Outlaws.
But they dropped an article today. Today is, I mean, it's going to be like the end of March when this episode drops, but the beginning of March, there are articles dropping today. Even this game's still projected to come out this year, as of very recently. So it's still coming.
I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I played through both the Star Wars games with Cal Kestis. What was that?
The Jedi games, Survivor and
Fallen Order and Survivor.
Yeah. So I really like both of those. I really think that they did a good job. It's like they're not everything is like canonical, but it's not at the same time. It takes place within the same universe, but they're not trying to rewrite anything. So Cal Kestis, being the fact that he was the driver of Order 66,
As so
is
many were.
fascinating to me. Yeah, that number just keeps adding up. But I really like the fact that they made it a game within itself. You had the Inquisitors, you had all this other stuff. It was in the Star Wars universe, but it wasn't. And I feel like having a game in the universe, especially like a open world game, that you'd be able to kind of experience all that is Star Wars with the blasters, and I would assume at some point in time be lightsabers in there, even though they're not a Jedi. But one of the things I'm really excited about is being able to hop from planet to actually flying around. They're saying it's supposed to be seamless, but how it is. Because they're also talking about coming out with either a Mandalorian or a bounty hunter game that's supposed to do the same, and that's got my attention.
Still on the books, also, I believe, or is that one dead?
No, that is now dead.
Oh, is that the one the bounty hunters one for that was going to be on the Switch and everything?
That was
the one that's
dead. No, so that was EA killing all non-sports related stuff, and they said it was announced a year ago that it was Respawn was working on an FPS, and announced like a month ago that it was actually going to be based on Mandalorian culture, and now it's dead. Good job, EA.
That's too bad.
I'll make my one chuckling Star Wars comment here, and then I will leave this be. George Lucas, when all the expanded universe books were coming out back in the day, in that long period of time between Return of the Jedi and the prequels, he had guidelines out there for authors like, listen, there's more to the universe than just Tatooine. There's more to the universe than just the Skywalkers. There's more to the universe than just, and there's an irony in that I can't put my finger on, but it's that I agree. Whenever I see, when I see stuff like the Jedi games, the Cal Kestis Jedi games, and when I see stuff like Outlaws, I'm like, listen, this universe is huge. Let's go for it, guys. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, there was thousands and thousands of Jedis and stuff that were not killed off by the Order 66. Why not make a legacy somewhere else? Because one hill that I will die on is that Rey is not a Skywalker. Rey is a Skywalker in the same way that I'm a Kennedy.
I don't know what you're talking about. That series ended with a perfectly executed Episode 8.
She's like, "Oh, Rey what?"
I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this now. I'm an 8 defender to the end, and I got nothing. Okay, well let's move on. I'm just taking this bus and keeping it at 55 now at this point. Let's talk about a quest. A question from the Channel 3 history books we're pulling out for us to discuss here with you. One thing we've not talked about through the course of your discussion here, we haven't talked about any fighting games. So I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite fighting game?
That's a hard one. Not so hard. It would be Injustice 2. I don't know what it is. That's actually Leia right there. That's my cat.
Oh, that's hilarious. Just jumping on the poster too.
Yeah, that's the Leia Organa. But anyway, so my favorite fighting game is Injustice 2. We had mentioned previously about. She's going to jump. We had spoke previously about how I want to be able to kind of have an RPG in a way that I can actually change and move characters around. I can change the way they look, the way they act. And I think Injustice did a fantastic job with that, in the way that you can very easily just you can upgrade something. You can just change a headpiece, a hat, armor, a weapon, something like that. Especially once they introduced the Ninja Turtles into it, because then you had 4 Ninja Turtles that you could completely change up. You could change the way they act, to change the way that they look, to be a completely different character. Um, and you could very easily go in and play online and stuff against people, and unlock boxes or whatever else it was to completely change a character. The fighting game itself was good. It was where you couldn't really. It seems like there was several characters like Starfire, which I wasn't very good at. My wife was pretty decent at it, but you had to change the way that you completely played it. We had spoke previously about how I'm more of a tank, but with Starfire, you had to. Everything was more kind of distance, and you kind of had to plan ahead and not just button mash. And so I really liked being able to kind of have different fighting styles and being able to change the aspects of the character. So that is my favorite game, and I can't say I've played too many more fighting games since that.
And the final question that we ask all of our guests: what is your favorite Channel 3 feature?
So I'm going to cheat on this one, and not necessarily say a feature, but my absolute favorite thing about Channel 3 is the community. For many, many years of being I've been streaming and I've been trying to kind of get active on social media and stuff like that. I've been trying to build a community. And it wasn't until like I found Channel 3 that I was like, community's already here, you know? So I everything that I had been trying to do I had a Discord set up and I had all this type of stuff, and I was trying to bring communities. Nothing's about me. Nothing's about anything else. It's about coming together and playing. And I think that's my favorite thing about Channel 3 is I can go on there and I can post something about a game that that no one's ever heard of before. And really, there's not a game no one's ever heard of before, but a game like Mass Effect 2, where I could go on Facebook or Instagram or whatever else and say, "Oh, Mass Effect 2 is great because of X, Y, and Z," and people would be like, "Cool." But you say something on Channel 3, and you've got people saying, "Oh, well, I like it because of this, and I like this, and I like this." Then you also have people that are like, "Oh, well, yeah, I didn't really like it." And you're like, "Cool." So you can have a full-on conversation. There's no negativity. There's no. It's really just like water, like sitting around the water cooler and talking about your what you feel passionately about. So I mean, the community is my favorite feature, my favorite aspect of Channel 3, because I've only been on Channel 3 for, oh gosh, I'd have to look, but really not that long. But there's not like this some sort of elitist or that they're like, oh yeah, this guy's new, whatever. You guys welcomed me in with open arms, and I was able to feel comfortable and just interact and be part of the community from absolute day one.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of What Are You Three? I want to thank Jackalope for being on the show today. And again, he supports a number of clubs that have great motives behind it, including Wounded Warrior Project, the Movember Club, the Service Member Gang. And Jackalope, thank you for your service. And again, go out there, find Jackalope Tactics on all of the different podcast services to listen in on Jackalope's podcast. Find this podcast on c3.gg/podcast, dropping every Wednesday morning at 3:33 a.m. Eastern on all major platforms, including Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple, all other platforms. I've been Ender. Dan puts this whole thing together. This has been produced by executive producer Joe Willis. Theme song by Castor Garden, c3.gg at Castor Garden. Thank you, everyone.
Channel 3 is the future.